I think we're live.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, for everybody who's just coming with us here on this first episode, my name's Trey. I'm the host of the Bitcoin is Dead podcast, and I'm here with Taxman Tom Jones, Tom the Taxman Jones, the co-host of the Bitcoin is Dead podcast. Taxman, what's going on?
Getting ready for April the 15th, because here we are on a beautiful Easter Sunday, and tomorrow, of course, will be the first day of April, so 15 days to get your taxes in order. If not, get an extension.
How long is the extension for?
When you file for the extension, it gives you until October the 15th for individual tax returns.
Oh, so it's like a reasonable period of time. It's like 6 months.
Yeah,
or so.
6 months.
Yeah.
But you get the extension to file, not to pay.
So like if you file in October, but you have to pay, what happens?
Right. If you did not compute your taxes within 99% of accuracy on April the 15th, and you pay the amount come October the 15th, you're going to be hit with additional penalties and additional interest.
What kind of interest does the IRS typically do?
It's tied to the prime, I think now it's 7-8%.
Calculated monthly or something like that?
Oh, that would be over a calendar year, 12 months.
Oh, okay.
But the penalty, depending upon the amount of money you owe, could be as much as 5% per month for 5 months. So that could be 25% of the amount of taxes you owe.
I need to come do my taxes.
Oh, yeah. You can get time, but it's going to be costly to get time now.
Yeah. Do you think do you think that the IRS has gotten worse over the past, say, 10 years in regards to how they operate towards things like Bitcoin, or just in general?
In general.
Yeah.
Especially with the interest and the penalties. The estimated tax penalty has always been there, but it was computed by hand, basically, which means you had to have a human who opened a return, the paper return, and went through it manually. Now, with the technology, it's all being done by the artificial intelligence. So that being said, there's no way to get out of the estimated tax penalty and additional interest when you owe taxes come April the 15th.
I heard I saw this on, I think there might have been a documentary or something on Netflix that I saw, but I heard there's like an algorithm like a mathematical algorithm that the IRS will use to like basically scan your tax return. And and regardless of like, if you did everything right, the algorithm kind of makes a prediction or a determination.
It gives you a score. It gives the tax return a score. And based on the score, determines your possibility of being audited.
Oh, I think I've been audited. I've gotten 2 times in my life I've gotten you owe back taxes type of things, but I was never described, like nobody ever described it to me as like an audit. It was just, I got a letter that said, oh, you owe taxes from 2 years ago. Here's how much
that was an audit.
Yeah, so I've been audited twice then, I guess.
Right.
I just got one for $63 from North Carolina State, I think it was.
You're such a lucky guy.
Yeah, it was like $63. I was like, well,
now, if you take the 63 and multiply it times 1 million taxpayers, that's $63 million the state of North Carolina is now collected.
Yeah, I mean, if they pull every penny from every taxpayer that they can, it does add up.
And it does, because now again with the technology, let's say you owe $20 5 years ago and you didn't pay it. Well, this year you go to file your taxes and you're entitled to a refund of $100. Well, the $20 that you have not paid will be deducted from your refund, plus additional interest and penalties.
Yeah. Unpleasant.
So the tax man is going to get his.
It's unpleasant. Well, so like we kind of came together to start this podcast after a few years of going through the Bitcoin world together.
Exactly.
What's your opinion on the Bitcoin world now that you've been in it for a little bit? Like, where do you stand on it?
It's very much is going to be a way of life and a way of doing business. It's not going away. It's pretty clear on that. And with the way things have changed over the last 6 months, it's just been mind-boggling.
Have you seen the price today?
No, I have not looked at the price today.
71.
$71,000.
Yeah, that's we were rolling through the radio show at $17,000, $19,000 Bitcoin.
Correct.
And then we came back to the radio show at like $33,000 or $35,000 Bitcoin. And now at some point we'll go back to the radio show again and we'll be at 70. I mean, potentially at 70 or plus. It depends on, how the next couple of months go. But the Bitcoin world, from like a financial perspective, it seems to just now be catching on with like your traditional financial folks.
That, and also people beginning to get an understanding that it is actually an asset.
Yeah.
Of course, when people have asked me about it and begin to try to explain to them the whole blockchain technology and how it works, some people can get a handle on it, some people cannot. If you have a fairly good knowledge of the computer world and how things are computed, then you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people I don't want it. I don't want to deal with it. In fact, they don't want to deal with anything that's on their telephone, anything on the internet, because, of course, they've heard a lot of horror stories out there where the bank accounts have gotten hacked, credit card accounts have gotten hacked. So basically, it's created a wall of fear, and they just don't want to penetrate it. But the fact of it is, the whole concept of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, is not going anywhere.
Yeah, the fundamental idea, like what I've learned, especially through the radio show, trying to talk to the Golden Oldie station about Bitcoin is difficult. What I've learned is that there's 2 or 3 levels of disconnect from the regular person and the Bitcoin world. One of those is that they don't understand money in the sense of what money is. They might understand traditional investing. They might understand how to save money, how to budget, how to use money. But they don't have a good understanding of what makes a good money. The other thing that they run into is the concept of location, because they say, well, somebody will just take my Bitcoin, or I saw that Sam Bankman-Fried or whatever got arrested and they shut down Bitcoin.
Right.
The concept of like, you can have an object that lives on a particular computer or on a piece of paper or anywhere, and have that disconnected from the network or from computers completely, and it be safe there because nobody can access it. It's not like something like your Facebook account that lives everywhere and you just log into it. Your Bitcoin lives in a specific place. And people have a hard time grasping that.
That, and also, I was born in 1960. So I did not have any exposure to computers till 81, 82. And back then, you had the old DOS, and people maybe remember how you had to write basically everything. So, of course, you could say that I've seen the evolution of the computer technology. And again, it was more in the schools and the workforce at 82, 83. So here we are now, 40 years later, and basically the technology that used to be on those big computers is now on your cell phone.
Yeah.
And when you look, and I look at my grandkids, and of course, they have no fear of using the cell phone, the Cash App, the TikTok, none whatsoever. So that makes me realize that the younger generation, especially the kids born in the 21st century, their whole concept of the Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, the technology is going to be completely different as opposed to someone as myself, born in 1960. And you made a comment that is so true. Very few people understand the whole concept of money. United States dollar, the British pound, the Mexican peso, how is a commodity that's bought and sold on worldwide exchange around the clock, 365 days. And I did not understand money until it occurred to me the dollar is a commodity. And once you understand that the dollar is a commodity that can be bought and sold, and the value can go up and down based on those fundamentals of supply and demand. And that's the thing about the Bitcoin. It's a limited supply.
Yeah, I don't remember much from economics class. I do remember taking it, but I don't remember much from it. But what I do remember is supply and demand.
And it never changes.
No, because it's the natural, it's nature's marketplace.
Right.
That's how supply and demand works. Nature says, I've got one orange tree. There's a limited number of oranges. the price of oranges then for anybody who wants them has to reflect that. And then if there's 10 orange trees, the price of oranges changes again. Like nature, capitalism exists as like pure capitalism exists in the form of it's the only way, it's the original way business had to be conducted because there was no other way. This is nature's version of exchange, is through supply and demand. And Bitcoin just lines up with that.
And no government intervention.
Yeah, like imagine the government.
If there's only 10 orange trees,
Yeah.
there was no government intervention to come along and say, okay, you got 2 trees too many, so therefore you got to cut these 2 trees down.
Did you see Biden's proposal for rent increases, like capping rent increases at 10% per year?
Wow.
Federally.
Is that a new idea?
Well, it's a new idea for us. It might be an old idea for, say, the Germans or the Russians in the 1940s and 50s, but it's a new idea for us. At least it being written down. You know, the problem with like the average person is they're so beaten by the system, and the system being like the financial system, that they don't see a hope. So if somebody provides them an idea of hope, that idea of hope is so far out of the system that they're not even sure if they can participate. Like there was a guy who came over here just a couple of days ago, and he's interested in Bitcoin, but his kind of general problem statement, not with Bitcoin but with money overall, is that, like, just point blank, he said, "I'm tired of being broke," and it's like you're broke by design. You're broke by design.
You would be broke and happy.
Yeah, you're broke by design. Like, look at the price of housing, the price of food, the price of gas, the price of anything since 1971. It's just decoupled from the average wage. And the people who are out there saying, I should get $15 to $20 an hour because I can't live a basic life at $7.50 or whatever the federal minimum wage is. They're right. You can't. Like yesterday, I went to the grocery store and got just enough. I mean, just the basics for Easter dinner, and it was $140. And I'm talking about a ham, a box of noodles. It's not like I'm buying lobster here. No, like a ham, the cheapest meat available, generally speaking, other than chicken.
Pretty much so.
Is pork, and the ham, cost me $30, $40 for an 8-pound or whatever it is ham. And it's insane. It's like, no, you can't make a living at $7 an hour and expect to have a decent life. It's not going to happen. It could have happened, but it's not going to now.
It could have happened if the value of the dollar still had the buying power. And what, especially younger people, as they go into the workforce, what they've got to understand is it's not how much you get paid, $20 an hour, $100 an hour. If you get paid the salary of a professional athlete, it's the buying power of what you're getting paid.
Yeah.
And as the buying power decrease, again, supply and demand, then that means you got to have more dollars in order to sustain the things that you want to buy.
Yeah, and those prices are going up, but your
Right.
wages are not keeping
No,
track.
and the more these products go up, or these commodities go up, the more you've got to have.
Yeah.
And the more meaning salary, money-wise, and the more money you got to have, the more money is going to continue to go up. It's a never-ending cycle there. And you mentioned 1971. And of course, if you go back in time, 71, 72 is when the United States came off the gold standard.
Yep.
Up until that time, the U.S. currency was backed by gold. And of course, gold is a currency. And the thing about gold, just like silver, it does maintain a value. It increases its value. And that's the thing about Bitcoin. Again, we started at 13, 14, 15,000, and now we're talking 70, 71,000. So this is a commodity that has continued to gain value and also increase its buying power.
Yeah, like I put some money in a Bitcoin wallet to have at the ready for various things related to mining operations. Right? Like if I need to get XYZ installed or whatever, a lot of times it's easier for me to pay that person in Bitcoin if they'll accept it. That Bitcoin, I think it was $800 in there worth of Bitcoin. I've paid to have a vent installed, which was, I put $1,800 in there. I paid for a vent to be installed. That was $900 because we had to get a crane. and I've paid an electrician. I still have almost $700 worth of Bitcoin in there because from between the time that I put the money in and the time that I paid the electrician, Bitcoin's price had gone up, 20, 30, 40%, whatever it was at the time. So my buying power literally in real time in front of my eyes was increasing. And now I can look at that wallet and go, okay, before I had enough in here to do 2 things. Now I have enough in here to do 4. So I'm like in my own personal processes, I'm realizing that if the other party accepts Bitcoin, it does make more sense to use Bitcoin. Like for them at least. Like for me, I should hold on to as much as I can, but I get cheaper rates if I pay in Bitcoin with a lot of these guys because they want it. Right. So it works out both ways.
And they are not only getting compensated for that time, material, supplies, what have you, but with the appreciated value in the Bitcoin, their currency is actually gaining buying power.
Oh, the Bitcoin that I sent the guy to install the vent in the wall, it was $900. It's worth $1,400 now. I can see it. Like I know where it is. I don't necessarily.
So why wouldn't you use Bitcoin to do business?
Yeah, like why wouldn't you say, hey, I'll give you 10% off if you pay me in Bitcoin because in 6 months it's going to be up 40% potentially.
Right.
But was there a moment for you that you were like, okay, Bitcoin is different, like this that where you all of a sudden saw the world through the Bitcoin lens?
It kept coming back. I remember. I think it was during the Obama administration, you begin to hear different things about the Bitcoin and, of course, how it was used for different activities, legal and illegal. And I kept thinking, it keeps hanging around. It keeps hanging around.
It's dead.
Yeah, it's like a ball team that they just won't go away.
Yeah.
They just keep hanging around. They get a loose ball, they get the foul shots, they get a call their way, and that's what I began to realize about Bitcoin. It's just keep hanging around. It's staying in the game, and of course you've had the fluctuation in the value, but here we are now. In 2024, Easter Sunday, and we're talking $70,000 plus, and we're looking at the halving that's coming up. And the other thing that attracted me to it is how Bitcoin has evolved, especially over the last 5 to 6 years. And all you have to do is look at El Salvador.
Yeah, El Salvador is a great case study in 2 senses. One is, what happens if you actually lock up all the people that are doing terrible things to you? Like, what happens if you actually just say, you know what, fuck you guys, I'm throwing you in prison? And then the second is, what happens if you use, or at least make available to your citizenry, a currency that maintains its value over a long period of time? And the result is that El Salvador said, we're buying a Bitcoin a day. El Salvador has one of the lowest crime rates in all of the world, but now at least in South America for sure. Their tourism is up, through the roof. I don't know anyone who's traveled outside the country, outside of people going to Bitcoin conferences and crypto conferences and such as that. But one single destination for everybody has been El Salvador. Like it's on our radar now. Like me and my family, like maybe we should go and try out El Salvador.
Well, the president made a very good point. Of course, locking up criminals is really minimize crime. Also, what good is robbing someone if you can't rob them of anything?
Yeah, I mean,
and if they have their crypto wallet and only they've got the password, what good is me robbing you? I can't use it.
Yeah, this is where like Bitcoin and the Second Amendment start to meet, because one of the biggest hacks for Bitcoin is the $5 wrench attack. And that's where you've got $1 million in Bitcoin written down on a piece of paper, and somebody comes up and just beats you with a wrench until you give them that piece of paper, and now your Bitcoin's gone. That's the same with every other type of commodity in the world, right? Like you might not have gold in your vault, but you could have passwords to your accounts where gold is stored, and so on and so forth. But then you run into the Second Amendment. It's like, yeah, the reality is that self-responsibility is prominent in the Bitcoin world, and if you have Bitcoin, people can take it from you, but they have to enter they have to enter your physical world in 90% of cases to actually take it. If you're keeping it offline, right? If you're keeping it online, like the little wallet that I have for just quick cash for various activities, if I lose my phone, then that little wallet, might be gone. But I don't have to keep my Bitcoin there. I keep a little bit there like a checking account, but it's not my savings account. If you want my savings account, you're going to have to come beat me. And at that point, it's like, well, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to stop you from doing this. And that goes all the way up to, things like the castle law and defending the home from an intruder. Because once you've come here to take from me, I don't care if you're taking a spoon or my Bitcoin, you're not going to take from me because that's not okay. I'm not going to allow it to occur. So if you take it from me, then you've beat me to death with a $5 wrench and you win. I wasn't responsible enough. But in general, people like El Salvador, they help that problem by removing the criminals, by giving the citizens the ability to keep their Bitcoin in storage that can't be taken. So, I mean, it works out.
And it's given the people of Salvador confidence.
Yeah, I'm excited to get down there and see what the Bitcoin market is really like. But my understanding is the people that Bitcoin benefits the most are the low income people who run a small business, because no transaction fees, nobody can take that money. It's all you and the customer and the papaya or whatever it is that you're selling to them.
And the other thing that really attracted me to Bitcoin is the fact that when you do a transaction, you are eliminating the middleman, credit cards, banks, what have you, of taking a percentage of that.
Yeah.
So when I provide you a service of $500, it's actually $500. It's not $500 plus another 3-4% of what the credit card company is going to charge, or what the bank is going to charge me for my service fee to use their checking account, their savings account. So it also gives the consumer a true cost of what something is actually going to be worth.
Yeah, you can see up there we've got a TV here for those of you who can't see. That's just showing the mempool.space website. And on that website, you can see the average fee rate, depending upon how fast you want something to go through. And you can see that the average fee rate for the highest priority right now is $1.39. So you pay fees, but you pay fees to just the people that process that transaction. And the only thing that affects the fee rate is how many transactions are trying to go through. So if we get to the point where, right now, Bitcoin network's pretty quiet because there's only so many of us actually transacting on the network. But if it becomes something like a global reserve currency or something that is used for many, many, many transactions by many people across the globe, you'll see the transaction fees go up. But then you have these additional layers on top of it, like Lightning and these other things that help you move Bitcoin faster and basically for free, almost no fees. You're talking like sub-penny to 1 penny fees or something like that. But that fight's still on. Lightning might not be the one that wins it. It might be another network that comes out. So it's ever expanding to make it better for the user base.
And it's true free market.
Yeah.
Because there's no government intervention again.
Yep.
That where you have two competitors, 3 competitors or 20 competitors or 200 competitors for that matter there, that where they're competing to provide the fastest service, the most secure service at the least price.
Yeah, I mean, Lightning as a network has done really well, but there's 8 or 9 competitors at any given time that are trying. And I mean, I imagine at some point throughout Bitcoin's life in the future that these competitors will rise, in their abilities and in their use cases across the entire Bitcoin network. So Lightning has its foot in the door. Lightning has the ability to transfer money quickly between parties with really minimal overhead for the most part. But it doesn't mean it's the best. The best might still be out there, right? We thought checks were the best until Visa and debit cards came around and pretty much made checks obsolete, right? I think I've seen in the past 5 years 2 people write a check in a store, like actually at the counter. And most of the time they were older people, they're for whatever reason they're not interested in a debit card or maybe don't have one. But you don't see it that much anymore.
No.
You see debit cards, you see credit cards. That's what you got.
And you see the use of the cell phone.
Yeah, and there's many people who are like, I can't pay with my phone. Like, I can't use Apple Pay, right? And then people will tend to they don't adopt the technology as soon as it's out. They wait, a couple cycles for it to kind of pick up and come across their radar somehow. But when something's on your phone and it's as simple to use as like Apple Pay or something like that, it's like that's going to go, gangbusters in 5 years because it's just too easy to use.
And more entities, hospital, business, what have you, if people notice, no cash accepted.
Oh yeah, that's a big one for
no
me.
checks
Yep.
accepted there. And so it's these entities is telling the world that eventually cash is not going to be an accepted
Well, it's
means
hard.
of doing business.
Imagine if we had to use cash for all transactions. So imagine you live in the United States and you want to buy a house in Japan, and you've got the funds to do it in cash. Well, if it was a pure cash society, that would mean taking that cash and putting it on a boat or a plane and sending it to Japan to when the other party got it. They would verify that it was the correct amount of cash for the purchase price, and the contract can move forward. But the time between buying and selling is going to be a day or 2 days. Whereas in the Visa world, it's seconds. In the Bitcoin world, generally speaking, at maximum, it's around 10 minutes. Where you might see a block like so looking at the last couple of blocks that have been processed, the last two were processed 9 minutes ago. So basically back to back. But the one before that was processed 24 minutes ago. So it's not an exact 10 minutes, but on average over time, it's about 10 minutes. So the slowest we go is about 10 minutes. The fastest we go is basically instant. So that means that we can already do that type of a transaction better than cash can. Just that means that global business either moves at the speed of global transportation or global business moves at the speed of technology. And no business is going to say, let's go back to the speed of transportation. Let's go back to a pure physical world. And people are like, well, what happens when the internet cuts off? Bitcoin will die. What do you think your bank's going to do when the internet turns off?
Well, you're not going to be able to buy groceries. You're not going to be able to function. And people may not fully realize it, but if or when the internet goes down, that's it.
Yeah, everything functions off the internet. Like, I guarantee you, if you went to the bank right down the street and said, I want to withdraw $10,000, you'd have a hard time. Now go do that when the internet is off and everybody else is going to withdraw $10,000 or whatever amount they have in their bank account because they can't access it from their phone anymore. Like, the internet is the backbone of all of this.
Everything then.
The entire civilization.
Throughout the world.
Unless you live in a place where your entire world is based off the physical realities of things, then you're based off the internet. Like, if you live in, sub-Saharan Africa. If you live
Afghanistan.
Then you're dealing with local currencies in the physical form, communicating with people that are visible to you, that are in your vicinity. But that limits your abilities, right? Like, what can you buy? What can you sell? You can only play in your local market. You don't have a connection to the external market. So unless everybody wants to go back to that, then thinking that the internet is what's going to break Bitcoin is also ignoring the fact that the internet is what's going to break everything.
And you look at the hotspots in the world, Afghanistan, Palestine, people there are able to continue to make transactions because they can get Bitcoin.
Yes. I mean, of
course, they got to have the cell phone. They got to have the internet there.
They need a way to connect. Yeah. But you can do it like in Africa. I don't know exactly how the system works, but in Africa, you can send Bitcoin to people via text message. So it uses the traditional cell phone network versus like the internet version of the cell phone network. So flip phones, very, old school, very inexpensive, very easy to use, very light as far as like the requirements to get a connection are concerned because they don't really use internet. So you can have a flip phone and text someone and earn Bitcoin or give them Bitcoin or receive Bitcoin in exchange. It's just information, and we know how to process information. The hurdles now are, how do you get this information sorted and presented in such a way that the average person can use it with little to no understanding of how it works under the hood. Like me and you, we've talked about Bitcoin ad nauseum, covering different technical details. But in truth, it doesn't really matter. What matters is can you use it? And it's getting easier and easier every day.
Can you use it? And can I use it whenever I want to use it there? Because, and again, that's going to be the difference, especially for the children, well, adults now, born in the 21st century and those born in the 20th century. Because those born in the 21st century, and again, I just look at my children, my grandchildren, it's second nature to them. Everything they do is second nature with the phone.
Oh, yeah. My daughter, she doesn't want to go to a restaurant. She wants to DoorDash the food. She doesn't want to go shopping for clothes. She wants to
No.
order them. She has no interest outside of hanging out with friends. She has no interest in actually participating in the physical world when it comes to getting what she wants. She just order it. I mean, you can Amazon everything from medication to basically anything.
Amazon Prime,
yeah, you can
UPS, United States Postal Service.
Yeah, DoorDash comes in and says, "Hey, we'll deliver any food." Well, she's eating at restaurants I've never even heard of that are within 20 miles of us because they'll DoorDash it here.
And another thing too, Trey, when we think about the world of pre-COVID, post-COVID,
Yeah,
because COVID, in its own strange way, have changed the way we do business in the world, and we're not going back to it.
no, COVID really changed. It made businesses go, what's possible on the internet that we excuse me, that we generally didn't think about before. It wasn't what can we sell on the internet. It was how can our employees work completely remote. And then other businesses popped up and said, well, people are working remote. They can't go anywhere. We're going to deliver the food. And then those businesses started to gain not a foothold financially, but gain a foothold in like the consciousness of society. And now we know that those things are possible, so we want them. Right? Before we didn't know you could deliver from anywhere for roughly, say, 15 to 20% markup or whatever it is. But now you can deliver anything from anywhere to your house in like 2 or 3 days or 20 minutes if you're talking about DoorDash. And
including Sundays. Don't forget Sundays.
Yeah.
You see these delivery trucks on Sundays as well.
My kids could not believe that in South Carolina you can't buy clothes at Walmart before 11 a.m. They could not believe it on Sundays. Like blue laws and stuff down here in the South. Like I remember coming up and there being like ropes around the like the clothing area, and you could get groceries, but you couldn't buy a T-shirt. You could get like your basic medicine, but you couldn't buy like a VHS tape or whatever from Blockbuster. Like it was illegal to do anything before like 11 or 12 a.m. or 11 or 12 noon, and my kids just can't wrap their head around the fact that like somebody stopped you from buying a thing because of what time it was. I'm like, yes. And we used to rent DVDs or movies, and they had to be back in 3 days. They don't understand that either. Like, what do you mean? Why don't you just download it?
Right. I remember those days.
They don't even have the concept of what it's like. And it's not like I've been around for that big of a transition in technology. I was around in the early days of the internet when I was a kid. But most of my adult life, technology has been cell phones available, internet's available, computers available. They've changed in their abilities, but they've been around. My kids don't even know a world that the internet didn't exist in. They have no concept of it.
So if they had to get up and change the channel on the TV, they wouldn't watch TV.
They'd be like, Trey's lost his job. We've gone to the poorest side of poor. We don't even have a remote control. They would not understand.
Or to use those old dial-up telephones.
Yeah.
Worse yet, be on a party line and you got to wait for somebody to get off the line.
Oh, or yeah, you're excited because you got three-way calling now, so you can have two people on the phone at once.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take a few minutes to talk about how I got here to the Bitcoin world, because it wasn't a straight path for me. I'm the result of what happens when you take a kid from the trailer parks who's into all kinds of terrible shit and has just generally speaking, a not good upbringing, and throw him into the Marine Corps. And then while he's in the Marine Corps, he meets like a hardcore Catholic, and that he starts questioning that Catholic about not his belief system, but questioning that Catholic about, like, why do you think this is XYZ? Not related to necessarily to his religion, but like you can look at the world and say, why does this work this way in your opinion? And his opinion already be formed because of the way he was raised, things like that. What happens if you take a guy like that and then push him into higher income level jobs? Well, like, a lot of things occur. But one of the things that occurs is you start to realize that there's no value in money. You come up dirt poor. I remember my uncle, we would drive through these nicer neighborhoods in my hometown, and my uncle would go, see that house over there? That's $100,000 house. That's where the upper crust lives. And so when I started looking for a house, my kind of idea was like, yeah, they cost like $100-ish grand, right? Well, I was wrong. At the time, this would have been 2014. At the time, buying my first house, I thought for sure I'd be able to get in somewhere around 100, 115,000. But the houses we were looking at that were 3-bedroom, 2-bath, kind of your standard home, were 150,000 to 250,000. And if we went down to 100,000, the houses we were looking at were like strange A-frame homes like you see in Scandinavia, and like homes with odd characteristics or broken bathrooms, or they're missing a bedroom that you need or whatever.
Or the neighborhood.
Yeah, or the neighborhood wasn't great. So like all of a sudden that $100,000 upper crust that my uncle talked about when I was a kid is now the lower end, the lower income side of things. And then you take one step beyond that in the downward direction, and like people that I came up with, they still look for homes that are not in the upper crust of that 100,000 as they see it. They look for homes that are, what's the monthly payment? I don't care about the total amount. Like, what's the rent? And that rent might be, say, $700 a month. Well, $700 a month ain't a whole lot when you talk about a mortgage. But that's where they're at. They're at $500, $700 a month, plus lot rent if it's in a trailer park or something like that. So like when I came into any type of like regular paycheck money, I thought, I can't spend all this money. There's no way. Like I wouldn't even miss $800 a month. Wouldn't even be a big deal. Like rent for them to me wouldn't even be a big deal. And then I realized you can spend all this money a lot faster than you think you can.
Because the taxes must be paid first.
Well, you got taxes, and then you have a debit card that doesn't have a number on the front of it that tells you how much is on it. So it's not like I sit down and balance my debit card book every month like my dad used to with a checkbook. At the end of the month, you just go, damn, where'd all the money go? Shit, I don't even know. Like, let me look back in the bank. Oh, yeah. Oh, $70 here, $40 there, $100 dinner. So then that kind of shattered my idea of like what success looked like, because I wasn't happy in what I was doing. I wasn't happy with the money I was receiving. Like, it wasn't providing me with the life that was comfortable that I wanted. And all these things were happening at the same time that I was questioning things outside of money. Like, what is God? Because, like, when I went to boot camp, they said Protestant or Catholic. And I was so ignorant to religion. I was just like, Baptist. I don't know what Protestant or Catholic is. Baptist.
Flip a coin, yeah. Right? Let's just flip a coin.
And then my ass went to Ash Wednesday in Catholic church, or was it Palm Sunday, Ash Wednesday? I can't remember, where they draw the Catholics draw the cross on their forehead and ashes or whatnot.
I think, yeah.
I did that in boot camp. I'm labeled Protestant, but thought I was Baptist. Didn't know that was part of being a Protestant. And so I was just extremely ignorant to religion. I started asking a lot of questions about that, existential questions, meaning of life, this, that, and the other. And what I found was that nothing really answered my questions. I see time, I think, maybe slightly differently because of some of my like natural interests. Like, I'm really interested in history. I've done some work with a group called the SCA where I recreated a lot of the medieval time period and played a lot of games with that. And I always wondered, like, in the context of God, the Egyptians were around as like a big culture for, I'm probably wrong I'm giving rough numbers here, but roughly 2,000 years. So that means how many grandmas went to bed every night, tucking their kids in, telling them that they need to worship Sun and Set or Ra or whatever particular god there was. And that had been going on for generations, that same name and that same God. And then you come to us, and it's like, how do we know we're right? Well, people are like, well, people worship Jesus for 2,000 years. Like, the Egyptians were doing it for 2,000 years. How much history is before the Egyptians where they worshiped somebody else? How long were the Vikings worshiping their gods? Like, how many people that you would have loved and trusted and known that they meant nothing but the best for you, that told you that Thor made lightning and that's the end of the story?
The Babylonians?
Yeah, I mean, how many of these groups existed? And so how do we know we're right? And so taking that kind of philosophy of looking at time, looking at money, and starting to question, like, how does all this, what's the single unifying factor? What's the grand unifying theory of being a human? How do you live a good life and do well by the people that you're around when you can't answer these basic questions? A lot of people get this early on in life. Like my Catholic buddy, he got this at birth. Like, you're baptized or you're put into the Catholic Church, you go through Catholic school, You're raised Catholic. Your family is Catholic. It's Catholic all day. So these principles are built into you. You have a belief system because it comes from, your entire origin story. But when your origin story doesn't really exist in that context, and you start having to pick from all the different religions and all the different philosophies in life, at some point you're like, all of you sound very similar. And all of you sound like you're the one that I should listen to. So there's no real good way to pick between you. I can criticize each one. I can pick apart each one. But in general, you're kind of all very similar. So how do I select anything? And I was lost for a really long time in that concept. I tied the same concept, the same idea to money. Like why is it that making more money doesn't make me happy when it's what everyone's trying to do? Everyone's trying to make more money, but making more money doesn't fix any problems. And
the problems only grow and become bigger and bigger and harder to solve.
And discussions, like debates and discussions with a lot of people over time have taught me, like, I don't know anything. In fact, I don't know if I'm actually smart enough to know that I'm stupid or if I'm stupid enough to think I'm smart. I really haven't figured out which one of those I fall into, because I think I'm smart and then I run into someone who just completely turns my world upside down with just a few words or a few ideas. And then I'm like, oh, I'm back to square one. That guy had it figured out, and now I don't know anything. So when it came to Bitcoin, philosophically, it was a journey into, is there a better way to do things than the way we've always done them? In not in a religious sense or even a financial sense, in like a social structure sense, because politicians are trying to get more money. Our local school system's always complaining that they need more money. The school lunches are terrible, and they've gotten worse even since when I was in school. And the only thing that they say is that if we just had some more money, we can make them better. But then I look at Japan, their school lunches are great. I look at all these other things that are downstream of money, where everybody keeps saying, if I had more money, we'd fix this problem. But you get more money.
There would be no homeless.
Yeah.
There would be no drug addiction.
But that's not the case.
All the students would be grade A students. Everybody be bound for your Ivy League schools.
Well,
but that's not reality.
No, and the case for my grandparents was, if we just had a little more money in this particular organization, we'd be okay. It just changed. I mean, it could have not been public schools. It could have been something else, but it was the same problem fundamentally. They didn't have enough money. And so it's always an argument of allocation of funds. Where does a given entity allocate its funds? But I never asked the question, like, what if we had money that was better than this money? Like, that somehow functioned differently and that was better. What problem would that answer? And when I found Bitcoin and started getting into it, that's when I started asking that question. What happens if the school systems had, not that we should allot them amount of Bitcoin, but if they were to come into an allotment of Bitcoin or an amount of Bitcoin, would they still complain that they needed more money if they knew next year that their money that they already had would be more valuable? What services would they remove? What services would they offer? How would they ensure that they were the best school that they could be in order to get more Bitcoin? Because they know that if they can get more now, they'll be richer tomorrow.
Because the buying power has increased.
Yes.
And that's the key to it.
Everything
Your buying power has to increase. Whatever it may be, the U.S. dollar, Canadian dollar, what have you. If your money loses its buying power, then that means you got to have more money.
Yeah, you always need more money.
Right. You're the cat chasing its tail, because the buying power of the money, whatever currency you may use, continue to go down. Well, if it continues to go down and you keep throwing more money at it, and the money you keep throwing at it continues to go down, you'll never get out the hole.
The school system, and I use them as an example, I don't think that the people that work at my local school system are bad people. I think they're just stuck in a system that's been built, not for them, but they've, like, a system that's been built for years that they just came into. But I think if we could convince the school system here to, say, adopt Bitcoin, or to not live on a Bitcoin standard, because it's fairly difficult right now for something like a school to operate like that. But I think if the school taught Bitcoin mining, if the school taught Bitcoin fundamentals, supply and demand, things like that, but then actually practice those at their own budgetary level, that they would see an El Salvador-like increase and kids wanting to go to that school and the behavior of the students and the teachers of that school. Because truthfully, the students are shit. I mean, kids today are fucking assholes for the most part. They really are, because they're stuck in a phone and they don't know how to socialize normally. But if all of them started to, in their own personal way, as members of the faculty and the student body, started to become educated and adopt Bitcoin, all of a sudden you're thinking long term. You're doing things differently. I think it ends better.
And you're giving the kids a purpose. You're giving them confidence.
Yeah, your world can be better tomorrow.
Right, and that's the problem that some of these kids is dealing with, is they don't see a way out. Unfortunately, the home is totally dysfunctional. Then they're going to a school that's dysfunctional, and everything around them is dysfunctional. So they just throw up their hands and say, "To hell with it. I'm just going to be part of this whole dysfunctional act that I'm trapped in." But if these kids have a way out, then it's going to change the way they think. It's going to change their attitude. Because I don't care who you are. When your attitude changes and say, wait a minute, I don't have to stay in this hole. I can get out of this hole. I can change my life. Not only will I change my life, I can change the lives of the people around me. Well, it's going to make a complete difference in the way you interact with everyone else in the world you live with.
I agree, because my life changed when I started looking at Bitcoin this way. The last crazy thing I bought was I bought a boat. And it's not all that crazy to buy a boat. But if I had the mindset that I do today, I would not have bought that boat. I would have bought Bitcoin. And that would have been a year and a half ago or so. A year and a half ago. When I was just really starting to understand Bitcoin.
Well, Trey, let's see. You spent, what, $10,000 on the boat?
No, I was like, I'm going to be Bitcoin savvy.
Yeah.
And instead of spending $10,000 on a boat, I'm going to spend $2,000 on a boat and then fix it up. That's not how boats work, right? Boats are like, no, you just got to put more money into it every time you turn it on.
For boaters out there, they may be familiar with the two happiest days when you own a boat: the day you buy and the day you get rid of it.
Hey, I was pretty happy the day I bought it, I will admit. And I haven't got rid of it yet, but I suspect that if I do, that might be a pretty good day too.
But if you look at the money, let's just say for conversation, it was $2,000 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Where would that $2,000 be valued now if it had gone into Bitcoin?
Would be up 100-ish%. So it'd be worth about $4,000. I would something like that. Yeah, I mean, and
do the math,
and that's where I get stuck.
And that is what is going to give people a purpose and a meaning. Because when you say, here's $1,000, you just leave it alone. Don't touch it. Just leave it alone there. And you go back a year later and it's double. You can be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Imagine if it was a $10,000 boat that I was going to buy, and now it's $20,000. That's not that much difference between $2,000 and $4,000 in purchasing power. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is, but there's a big difference between 10 and 20.
And it's going to teach people how to manage their funds.
Yeah,
they're not going to be driven impulsively. Oh, I see this. Let me go ahead and buy it. No, I'm not going to buy it, because if I wait, I'm going to get this money back and some.
Dude, my whole, excluding the microphones, almost this entire podcast setup was built out of a thrift store down in Burlington. I've gone to that thrift store probably 7 or 8 times now. Because they've got tables, they've got chairs. I'm like, I'm never going to like Walmart or anywhere else again, because this thrift store has damn near everything I need. And it's like the most ridiculously cheap prices of it. Like this table that we're on right now, it's just kind of just a regular kitchen table. I guarantee you on Facebook, somebody was selling this used, it'd be $300. I bought this table for, I think, $70, $60 or $70. And it was one of the more expensive ones. It's like,
and it makes you think how much you have overpaid for whatever.
My whole life, I've overpaid for everything. Especially when I got some money.
I realized it when I went through my divorce and had all these credit cards out there, and the credit card companies was like, well, if you can do half, we'll write it off. And I was thinking, wait a minute, you're going to let me write off $5,000 of debt for half? So that pretty clearly tells me I spent 2 times too much for whatever I charged.
Yeah, so interesting development now that you mention it. I just started a new job with a Bitcoin mining company. We've talked about that. But I'm in, it's day 2 with this company. And I'm in not a conference call, but I'm having I'm wrapping up a call with one of the people that I work with. And my wife comes to the door and she says, "You got to come here." And I was like, "I can't. I'm in a call." She's like, "No, there's a cop at the door." And I was like, "Oh, shit. All right." And I tell the guy, I'm like, "Look, I don't mean to cut us off, but there's a cop at my front door. I got to go." He says, "Okay." So I get off the phone. I go out to the front door. There's a local police officer there. Very nice. And he said, "I'm just delivering this to you. I don't know what it's about, but you've got this paperwork that I have to deliver to you." He said, "It looks like a lawsuit." I was like, "Oh my God. Like what on God's earth could I be getting sued for?" A couple years ago, I had a credit card. Fell behind on the payments. I'd had the credit card for a long time. It was the first credit card I got. I fell behind on the payments after they'd given me a very high credit limit. And once we fell behind on the payments long enough, this was during COVID when it happened, they eventually just quit talking to us, like altogether. And I thought, well, they're going to write it off. It'll, I'll take a pretty big ding on my credit report. But it is what it is. Like, I can't change it. No, they didn't just put a ding on my credit report. They came knocking and said, "This is how much you owe. We're taking you to court. You're being sued." And this was like 2.5 weeks ago or something. And I was like, "Oh my God. Like, what am I going to do?" So I get on the phone with them. "This is how much you owe, and these are your options. You can pay in bulk, in full right here. You can pay these payment plans, or you can settle for this amount." I said, "Okay, let me do some research." I thought about calling a lawyer, but then I was like, what am I really going to ask the lawyer to do? Like, negotiate on my behalf? Or, because
Exactly.
the truth is I owe this money one way or another. So I decided that I was going to try to negotiate and say, "Look, I can pay you a lump sum, but I can't pay you a lump sum that you're asking for. Right? So if you don't want my offer, I have to go to payments." And immediately they were like, "Well, we'll come down a little bit." And I said, "Okay, I can do that. It's going to take me a few days to get things together." He said, "Well, hang on a second. Let me call the bank." This is a lawyer I'm talking to now, like the lawyer representing the company that's suing me. He said, let me call the bank." So he puts me on hold. I'm on hold 2 minutes tops. You're not getting somebody to make a decision at a bank in 2 minutes about $3,000 or $4,000.
It's magic.
It's not going to happen. What he did was he put me on hold. He talked to whoever he had to talk to. He looked in his book, whatever he needed to do, and realized that he could come down another couple grand. And so they did. They came down, and it ended up being exactly 50% of what I owed. When they started, they wanted 75, 85%. So I recently got sued, and it was not a pleasant experience, but I'm glad that I'm done with it because that's a mistake from my past that I'm now able to move on from, and I don't have to worry about it coming back.
And you learn how the game is played.
Yeah, I saw a little bit more about how this
that again goes back to one of the things that, of course, should be taught in the home for these kids, if not definitely in the school, as to how this game is played. When you talk about credit cards, you're talking about financing your car, you're talking about financing your home. You've got all these additional fees in there. Most people never look at their their loan finance statement. They don't see those fees there, just like the doc fees. They don't realize that sometimes they're paying $1,000 for the process the paper.
It's because everybody's looking for a way to get more
right
money.
All they see is, okay, I can do $600 a month here, sign here, and off they go. Same thing with your house. They do not look at the closing statement. Again, in my profession, when I tell people, say, "Well, go get the closing statement." What's that? The closing statement, the thing you sign at the lawyer. Oh, that's what we signed.
What's crazy to me too is that it's almost like the system is built in a way to make it difficult for you to understand
and to intimidate you to not ask a question so that you won't look like you don't know what you're doing. When the fact of it is, you don't know what you're doing.
And that's the beauty of Bitcoin is it's complex under the hood. And yes, you can go as deep as you want and you'll never understand everything. But in principle, I'm sending money to you.
One Bitcoin is going to get me this, nothing else. Case closed. Done deal.
And if let's say you're a car dealership and you got $1,000 doc fee, are you going to compete with a car dealership that doesn't have $1,000 doc fee that runs on some kind of Bitcoin standard because that company is trying to actually give the end user the best product they can because they want Bitcoin to come in and they know but nobody's going to sell it for subpar service? If you're faced with a competitor who's on a Bitcoin standard, you're probably faced with a competitor that's going to outlast you. Because if their buying power is going up over time because they're collecting Bitcoin and their service is going up over time because they want the best customers to come in with the most Bitcoin, they're going to beat you. Look at MicroStrategy as a company. They've got like $400 million or so of revenue, of profit every year from their software company. But nobody's even heard of them. If in the regular world, Microsoft, everybody's heard of. Now, they produce different types of software, so they're not necessarily competitors. But now that MicroStrategy's adopted, basically, we're taking our entire balance sheet and converting it into Bitcoin and then taking out loans on our balance sheet to buy more Bitcoin. Now the whole world is starting to pay attention to them. So how much more business is going to get driven to MicroStrategy just through exposure to Bitcoin? And because people say, look at their balance sheet, they're going to be around for a lot longer. They've got more money.
And when they purchase an asset such as Bitcoin that continues to appreciate. See, the key word here is appreciate. Depreciate means you're losing value.
Yeah.
Appreciate means you are gaining value. And if you borrowed against $500 million, and then the next day you come back, the $500 million have gone up in value, $3, $4, $5 million. You are a genius.
Well, MicroStrategy's almost found out like an infinite money glitch, because what they do is, and I'm speaking in like dumbed down terms because I don't know the ins and outs of a lot of this terminology. They basically take their stock and they leverage their stock to buy Bitcoin. When Bitcoin's price goes up, the value of their stock goes up. So then they leverage their stock again. And because they're buying a limited asset or a limited quantity asset in the case of Bitcoin,
supply and demand,
their Bitcoin's price goes up every time that they buy. I mean, theoretically, which means the price of their stock goes up. So they leverage. It's like infinite money. You just buy more Bitcoin and you get more money.
And they are geniuses.
And they are raking it in. Like, I was listening to a podcast this morning, and there's a concern that Bitcoin's influence on MicroStrategy means really they're not really a software company anymore. They're just a Bitcoin holding company because they're buying so much of it. They own 1% of the market of Bitcoin. They have 1% of Bitcoin, just like BlackRock.
And again, going back to supply and demand, because the supply of Bitcoins is going to be limited. When does it stop? When's the last one going to be mined? 2040?
No, 2140.
2140.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at that time frame there, and by the fact that once we reach that point, there's no more Bitcoins.
Yep.
So that means that supply has stopped. Gold, silver, that's not the case. And of course, currency, US dollar, Canadian dollar, British pound, as long as you have politicians that think there's no end to it, they're going to continue to generate more money.
And devalue
and that's the thing of it is. And when you go back and you look at the devaluation of, just look at the US dollar from the time it was backed by the Federal Reserve, 1913, the time period there. Basically, I think it's worth 2 cents, 3 cents, something of that value there. So you think about that now. So that means if you had $1 when the Federal Reserve was created, and here you are now, a little over 100, 110 years later there, you worth 4 cents or 3 cents or whatever it may be.
Now, inverse that with Bitcoin, and that's the world that we propose.
Right, and it's flipped it. And again, you don't have to go back, because I can't remember 1913. I don't know anybody that was alive. That's true. We'll go back to 1971, 72, when the United States came off the gold standard. And the continued devaluation of the money, because what people fail to realize is when the United States came off of the gold standard, it allowed our beloved politicians to create money out of air.
Well, what people don't understand about money is that they believe that inflation is a thing that's required for some reason. And I never asked this either. Why is 2% inflation?
Because we've been told by the Federal Reserve.
Because the bankers want 2%. If they wanted 4%, then it'd be 4% inflation, right? Like inflation is not a function of currency. It's
not your friend.
It's a bug that we introduced to the system. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. Have you seen this website? What the fuck happened in 1971?
I think you may have said That's it. Yeah. Well, 72. You see, that's the break point there. See.
Let me show you one of these. I got to scroll down to it. Everybody, if you're listening to this, just go to whatthefockhappened in1971.com. It's WTFhappened in1971.com. But there's one chart in here that's shocking to me. Most of them make sense. It's like, money gets worse and things get terrible and so on and so forth. But there's one in here that's shocking to me, and it shows what people valued before and after 1971 statistically. Let me take a look here. Home value changes. No. U.S. gold price, hyperinflation, currency crashes. I'll get to it eventually. Let me see.
Another thing that happened during the 70s there is when hyperinflation kicked in. And it wasn't until 1980 during the Reagan administration. And of course, the prime rate, interest rate went to 16, 17, 18%, that inflation began to come back. But the thing of it is, when your interest rate at the bank, 16, 17, 18, 19, or 20% for that matter, guess what? You're going to pay more income tax.
Yeah. It's a losing.
It's
battle.
A vicious cycle.
It's people. Okay, here we go. This is the chart I was looking for. What this chart shows is rating objectives to be essential or very important prior to and after 1971. And you see in roughly 1970, 35% of people said that being very well off financially was essential or very important. 35% of people. At the same time, 80% of people said developing a meaningful philosophy of life was very important or essential to them. There's a few other metrics in there, but let's fast forward till now. Now, 40%-ish people say that developing a meaningful philosophy of life is important, while almost 90 or almost 85% of people say that being financially well off is the most important thing. So not only the way our currency works, but the way our mind worked, like had a reset, a complete, like a seismic shift, 1971, 1972, because every part of our life is downstream of money. If I piss in the upstream, everybody downstream is going to get a little bit of, that shit on them. And the Federal Reserve just completely dammed up the river in 1971 when we pulled off the gold standard. Like, it went to shit. And some of the other things that are shown here is helping others who are in difficulty. Now, that surprisingly went up around the year 2000, according to this chart, but it was also on the downtrend after 71. Becoming an authority in my field is on a downtrend since 1971. Raising a family is basically right around the same place it was in 1971, but it's also on a slight downtrend since 2010. Like, everything measurable got worse after 1971, and nobody knows it because people have short memories. Like, they have short attention spans.
Right. I say they notice it, but they don't know why. They haven't connected the dots. They haven't
found the grand unifying theory of life.
And it's, again, especially going back to those born before 2000, before the 21st century, and those born after. The people born in the 21st century, they have no idea the fact that a dollar used to have a dollar buying power.
Yeah, nickel and dime stores were a thing.
And you was talking about your uncle there. I can remember, back in the 60s that my younger brother and I, we would pick up bottles and take it to the store because you could change the glass bottles for, it might have been a penny, 2 pennies then. But that 1 penny gave you a couple of pieces of bubble gum. And if you got a nickel, hey, that was a great day. And we don't want to talk about 25 cents.
Yeah.
That could last you 2 weeks there. Now when you talk about 25 cents, I see people, they won't even pick I look at my, going back to my children. My daughter, she never picks up her change.
Yeah, I don't have any change.
Yeah.
I just don't have any. Like, I think my wife has a jar that she might throw things into.
And that's because of people's mind, how they see, well, I don't want to be bothered with this change. I know for myself. Now, when I'm at wherever, except for the grocery store, if I'm buying food, whatever change, I say, put it in your penny cup.
Yeah.
Save it for the tip. And if you say save it for the tip, sometimes they'll look at you like, what do you mean?
Yeah, who you tipping? Well, so one of the things that I think that we're going to do differently on the podcast is every Bitcoin podcast kind of seems the same to me, right? They talk about like what the potential returns are, what the Federal Reserve is doing. You're talking about mostly the monetary side of Bitcoin, and that's an important side. But also there's a very important side from an education standpoint. There's a very important side from a philosophy standpoint. And I think Bitcoin made me, it gave me the answer, or gave me part of the answer to a lot of the questions I had, but it also created places where I'm like, I need to actually learn more about XYZ because I'm not aware, or I'm not up to speed enough to make decisions in this, a given realm. So one of the things I want to do is bring people that aren't Bitcoin natives into the show. And sure, we'll always talk about Bitcoin a little bit, but I want to learn about what they do. Like, we're going to have some tradesmen on here soon. And I want to know, like, how are you being impacted by the world as it stands today? Both financially, philosophically, how's your family? Where are you struggling? And how
and confidence. How much confidence do you have?
Especially in the future, right? Like, how much confidence do you have that your children are walking into a better life, either created by you or created by, your family or society? But the other thing I want to do is I want to figure out a way to make helping people easier in regards to Bitcoin. Because right now there are people out there for sure that you can get great information from. You can get a lot of help from. But are they reachable all the time? Are they actually trying to support you in your activities, or are they giving you general guidelines? And so I think that having the podcast and being able to talk about some things will help people, but also us having a Discord server where people can log on and talk and have a chat room will help. Let's say that you're interested in mining, but you're unsure where to buy your miner from. I can help you. I know many places that sell miners, and I've had good experiences with a number of them. So I can at least vouch from my own experience. But you won't know that unless you can talk to me, or unless I just happen to talk about them on the podcast. And the other thing I want to do is give our show something that's slightly different, that kind of contributes back to the community in a real tangible sense. And so behind, everyone can't see right now, but behind Taxman is a blank canvas. It's an actual canvas, like from an art store. And what we're going to do is, every time we have a new person come on the show, starting with me and Taxman, since this is episode 1, we're going to sign or draw on this canvas something, either our signature, a Bitcoin, anything we want. And we're going to continue to add on to that canvas with every signature and every drawing over the course of what I'm calling season 1, the first 21 episodes of our podcast. So the first 21 shows will have X number of guests in those shows, and they'll all sign or draw on the canvas. And at the end, we'll auction that canvas off. If anybody chooses to bid on it, then all the proceeds from the winning bidder will go to the Bitcoin core developer community. Now, I don't know exactly how to get to the core developers and figure out how I can pay them directly, but I'll figure that process out. In the meantime, we're going to sign and draw all over this canvas, and it'll be the first Bitcoin community artwork that a podcast has created that I'm aware of. So it gives us a unique thing to do. It's artistic, which I think everybody needs a little bit of that in their life, a little bit of emotional expression on paper or pen. And I think it's a good thing. I think it'll be fun.
A way to vent the frustration and the confusion.
I got into artwork. I started watching a lot of Bob Ross. I'm sure you're familiar with Bob Ross. What an amazing human he was. Mm-hmm. But I started watching a lot of Bob Ross and actually painted Bob Ross, that painting over there, the purple one with the cabin and the snow scene.
In the snow.
Yeah, that was my first ever attempt at painting, and that was directly following Bob Ross's instruction and using what I could get at my local arts and crafts store. And it was super fun, but I realized during the process that I am not an artist. I can replicate what instructions tell me to do, but I'll probably never be an artist. But can I contribute to a piece of artwork that it's a cumulative effort to people with my limited skill set? Absolutely, I can. I can write my name. I can draw a little bee. I can do all these things. And it's just, if anybody bids on it, it might hang in the home of someone, and they won't know half the people on it, but there would have been many people who contributed to a piece of artwork that I couldn't have created on my own. And it goes out the door and it's meaningful. Hopefully it'll help someone out. So that's some things I'm going to do. So we're going to educate people. We're going to bring on guests from different trades. We're going to talk local politics, local politicians. We're going to create some artwork. We're going to mine the shit out of some Bitcoin. We're going to teach people how to mine. I want to become an intersection for many things in the Bitcoin community to come through, at least our sphere of influence.
Right.
Because I think we've got a good message, and I think it's time to start taking it to them instead of waiting for them to come to us.
Spread the religion.
Yeah, it's time to be the free preacher. So, Taxman, I think we just did about an hour.
Fantastic.
It's been great.
Fantastic.
Next episode next week.
Stay tuned.
See you.